What's up, pumpers? Jerome here with another TBC video. Today we're talking everything Resto Druid for PvP in arenas. We're talking about the best gear and the best specs for Season 3, which is, in my opinion, the best season of TBC arenas. You're not going to want to miss this. Before we get started, please click that like button, hit the subscription button, and do not forget to click that notification bell, or I will not be able to keep coming out with more videos like this one.
You are not prepared!
Alright, so let's jump right into the Resto Druid PvP Season 3 BIS list. Before we get started, I do have one note, which is that the Bangle of Endless Blessings will be replaced now with the Battle Master's Perseverance. This new trinket is absolutely ridiculous. It is my favorite trinket ever. It's essentially last stand from a warrior, so you're getting a 1750 max health increase, and you're also getting that as additional health as well. So it works as a spike heal, essentially. It bypasses Mortal Strike and Wound Poison, for example, and also it gives you 88 base healing power as well, which is absolutely insane. And not to mention that it's on a 3-minute cooldown, so pretty short cooldown for such a massive effect. Absolutely makes druids monsters in this season. You're way tankier now. You have sort of a last second panic button you can press. Way better against things like Mage Rogue, for example. You are an absolute monster. It is really hard to kill a good druid if they have the Battle Master's Perseverance up. Alright, so now that we have that out of the way, it's time to talk about our BIS list. There are essentially two different options you have, and before we even get into exactly what you have as options, a lot of people are going to say Haste is really good, and Haste does have a very valid role for Resto Druids in PvE. Resto Druid probably gets some of the least benefit from Haste in PvP especially, although there is value for Resto Druid TBC Haste stacking in PvE, and we will get to a certain threshold to get an additional Life Bloom tick rolling. We're not going to be doing that in arenas because you will not get nearly enough haste unless you stack a lot of PvE gear. That is not going to be worth it. You don't want to run 0 resilience just to have haste. It is simply not powerful enough. So we're going to be skipping haste. We're not going to stack any haste at all. So all of those optional haste pieces that you might have been running, we're going to just completely skip over them. If for whatever reason haste turns out to be absolutely insane on TBC Resto Druid in PvP, I will come back. I'll make an updated video. I'll keep you in the flow. You don't have to worry about a thing. All right, so the way I see it, there are basically two valid options here. You can go with the route I'm going, the two-piece Kodo-Hide, Wormhide, just like always. You're going to be doing pretty much exactly what you've always done, Season 1, Season 2. Or you could do the Thorman route, 4-piece Kodo-Hide. You're going to have a little bit more healing power, about 50 more healing power. You're going to have a little bit more regen stats, which is great for those long games. And you're going to be losing about 37 resilience, so it's a trade-off here. It depends on your MMR, it depends on your bracket. In my opinion, it's much better to run more resilience, more survivability at lower MMR, because you're going to be taking more damage. You're not going to be having as much line of sight, for example. Not as many spells will be mitigated. You're just going to be taking a lot more damage. In my honest opinion, 50 healing power is not going to make the difference in any of these arena matches. You're definitely going to want to have that resilience. All right, so let's head over to the webpage and check out our 70 upgrades right now. So we've got the Vengeful Gladiator's Kodo-Hide Helm. This is the upgrade over the Merciless. And you're going to be running the new epic gem. We're talking about the 10 spell hit rating gems. We're going to be running 4 of these, and we're completely getting rid of our head or glove hit enchant. And so we're going to have way more healing power, which is awesome. And yeah, as you can see, we're going to be running 4 of the 10 spell hit rating gems, which unfortunately puts you a little bit over the 3% hit cap that everybody loves to get to. This is not really something you can fix. I've tried a bunch of routes. As far as I can tell, you're going to need to run these 4 yellow hit gems, and there's nothing you can really do about it. For the meta gem, we are back to our old reliable, the Insightful Earthstorm Diamond. This thing is absolutely busted. So many procs. You're going to get a ton of mana back every single game. You're going to have to run this, and that does mean you're going to need the 2 red, the 2 yellow, and the 2 blue gems, which can be a real hassle, but thankfully, there are some really nice new epic gems, which we'll talk about. Everything really has gotten better across the board for Resto Druids. These gems are a great example. Let's get into another example here, which is the Vindicator's Pendant of Salvation, which is going to be your off-piece from Grinding Battlegrounds. And we're going to run another 10 spell hit piece on this. Again, the 10 spell hit rating gem is absolutely necessary for your 3% hit that you're going to need. And then we get into the Vengeful Gladiator's Wormhide Spalders. This is where you have that flex pick. Do you want to run the 4 Kodo-Hide like Thorman, or do you want to run the 2-piece? Here you are getting a couple of extra benefits. You're getting additional spell critical strike rating, which is great if you're going to run Dream State, but it is pretty marginal. The healing power obviously is not as good, but you are getting so much extra resilience, it may be worth it for you. Keep in mind as well, we're going to be running these awesome new epic gems. We have the 22 healing power gem. The red one is fantastic. And we're going to get the 10 spell hit rating again from our yellow gem here. Getting into our cloak, we're going to be running the Shroud of Forgiveness. It's just sort of a Sunshower Light Cloak upgrade. Nothing special. We're not going to go for the Haste Cloak, but if you do end up getting it for whatever reason and you don't have the Shroud of Forgiveness, it's certainly an option. Other than that, there aren't a ton of cloak options here. The Stainless Cloak of the Pure-Hearted is still viable if this is your absolute last resort and you don't have anything else to go with. Next up, we have the Vengeful Gladiator's Wormhide Tunic. So I am running the shoulder and chest, which gives you more stats than if you ran the shoulder and glove. Overall, you're going to get a little bit more stats. It's not that significant, so if you did, for whatever reason, buy the wrong piece, it's not the end of the world. Just like our other pieces, we're going to be kitting these out with the epic gems. We have the red gems with a 22 healing power. You're going to need to get these as soon as possible. And of course, finishing off with another 10 yellow spell hit gem. Absolutely fantastic. All right, moving on, we have the Vindicator's Kodohide Bracers, another PvP piece. You're just going to have to do a bunch of battlegrounds. Your favorite BGs, do them all day and night until you have the Vindicator's Kodohide Bracers, which are a very, very marginal upgrade over last season's Bracers. Again, we're going to be kitting these out with the 22 healing power gem, just like before. Moving on, we have our weapon, the Vengeful Gladiator's Salvation. Fantastic weapon. Moderate upgrade over your last weapon. And you're going to be putting an 81 healing power enchant on this. One thing to note with the Vengeful Gladiator's Reprieve, which is your offhand, it is a significantly less upgrade than it was last season. So if you were thinking of rushing this ASAP, it is pretty marginal. All the pieces are relatively marginal here. One thing to note is there is a new offhand with spell penetration. I would resist the urge to purchase this. It has way less healing power, and that spell penetration just doesn't make enough of a difference. Over onto the gloves, we have our Vengeful Gladiator's Kodohide gloves with the healing enchant on these. Pretty straightforward, an upgrade over last season, and nothing really too much to talk about here. The Kodohide belt, the Vindicator's Kodohide belt, is a PvP off piece as well. More battlegrounds, more pumping. Keep in mind, again, these stat upgrades are not that significant. So if you don't have one of the pieces, you can get into arenas immediately and sort of work on this over time. It's not like you have to have a huge rush to do BGs right now. It's not going to be a massive difference maker. One thing to note here is that we are going to be putting in a PvE piece for our legs, the Kilt of Immortal Nature. No matter what spec you're running, this seems to be the leg you're going to want to have. Tons of healing power. Triple gem slot. It's going to fix up your Insightful Earthstorm Diamond. This is going to be the regen piece, especially if you're running something like a Dream Set. You need those stats desperately. But if you're whatever you're running, you need something to get you some mana, something to get you regen. That being said, if you can't get these legs for a long time, you could just run the Vengeful Gladiator's Kodohide legs, which are perfectly fine. You're going to have to reconfigure your gems to make the Insightful Earthstorm Diamond work again, and that's going to mean losing a significant amount of healing power. You're going to be down probably at least 100 healing power if you do that, which is, I would say, not really worth it. These legs with the triple gem slot have insane stats. And keep in mind, you're getting the extra gems elsewhere as well, because you're getting to run the purple gems here, and they get you a nice bonus. In my opinion, and I would say most Resto Druids agree with this, you're going to need to go get these. You're going to have to go raid and do this. They have a pretty high drop chance, 43% from Shade of Akama. This is something you can definitely get. I know it may not be something you want to do and go out in PvE, but I can say this is 100% worth it. You're not going to want to run those PvP legs. Next up, we have the Vindicator's Kodohide boots, another just raw upgrade over the last season's boots. So you got to go out and get more battleground marks and more honor. That's fine. It's not a big deal because, again, these stats aren't that big of an upgrade, so they're not a huge priority to go out and get right now. You can take your time, not the end of the world. All right, in terms of rings, we have a couple of interesting notes here. First of all, we're going to be using the Coral Band of the Revived again. The stats are just simply too good to pass up. So if you haven't gotten it yet, well, you got to go back to SSC and get it from Lady Vash. Luckily, I got mine recently. And again, important to note, we are running 20 healing power in each ring from enchanting, which is a pretty significant freebie for you. At this point, you should have been able to drop your tailoring. And a really interesting note here, you could have also dropped your engineering because the engineering belt no longer works in arenas. So you could even be running some extra jewel crafting stats as well from those special jewel crafting gems. But it's so marginal, I wouldn't say it's necessary. Though if you want every single little tiny edge, it's something you could look into. For our second ring, we're going with the Vindicator's Band of Salvation. It is the new upgraded ring from Honor. If you don't have the Quarrel Band or you don't have the Vindicators Band, you can absolutely run really whatever you want. You could get the Rep Ring that's coming up in the next phase, or you could go with, for example, the Haste Ring. The Haste Ring is a great option, huge healing power. The Haste really won't do that much for you, but it is definitely something you could have. Getting down to the meat and potatoes of this build, why are Resto Druids so good right now? Well, it's the Battle Master's Perseverance. We've already talked about it. The 88 healing power, the 1750 last stand effect, that is groundbreakingly broken. I'm talking about bypassing Mortal Strike, bypassing Wound Poison, everything that you wanted and dreamed of. There was a trinket like this in the last phase, the Insignia of the Horde, and it was just way worse. First of all, it did not bypass Mortal Strike. So, for example, if you got an 800 heal, it would only be 400 with Mortal Strike. So way worse than this. This is ridiculously, stupidly good. And 88 healing power as well, so you're just even better, even stronger. I would run this in any scenario, 5s, 2s, 3s, whatever it is. You're going to run this and change the rest of your gear. If you're in 5s, for example, you could add more healing power, whatever you want to do, but do not remove this trinket under any circumstances. Consider it locked to your character. Also, unfortunately, locked to your character is the Medallion of the Horde, or I guess Medallion of the Alliance, which is not going to be removed under any circumstances, and there's nothing you can do about that. One last note is you're still going to be running the Idol of the Emerald Queen, though the other idols are starting to look a little more interesting, though nothing that even remotely compares at this point. All right, so let's hop over to Chris Thorman's BIS list. He's a fantastic and very friendly Resto Druid, and he's a top-tier Gladiator rank 1 level player. Also worth noting, I did consult with Blakatron, who is another rank 1 Druid, and I wanted to get his thoughts, so he had a lot of input as well to help me with my build, and he gave me a lot of feedback and ideas that I will talk about later on in the video. Alright, so Chris Thorman's build is almost identical, and that's not a coincidence. I based my build quite a bit off of his, and as you can see, the gems are exactly the same across the board. There's really nothing you can do. Unfortunately, I looked to try to figure out a way to get one of the hit gems out so that you could have a little bit more stats, but there's really nothing you can do. You'll notice he's running full Kodo Hide across the board, which is going to give him way more healing power. We're talking 1946, versus if you look at my build, 1890. So that's pretty significant. And the question for you, of course, is at your MMR, what's more important, that a little bit of extra survivability or the little bit of extra healing? If you're against rogues, for example, a rogue mage, and you're dying over and over again, you're going to want that resilience. The little bit of extra healing will do nothing for you. But a little bit of extra regen, a little bit of extra healing, these things matter a lot more. The little bit of extra healing, the little bit of extra spirit, the MP5, these things matter a lot more at high MMR, where the mistakes are magnified. People don't make as many mistakes. You're not going to just randomly die at the start of every game. So the resilience matters a little bit less, and overall regeneration and longevity matters more. As you can see, other than the Kodo Hide pieces being swapped, this is literally the exact same build, and this is most likely what you're going to see with all Resto Druids, because as far as I can tell, there just isn't that much variety. There isn't much you can do with Spell Haste. There isn't much you can do to swap out pieces. There isn't like some magically amazing PvE piece you're going to want to put in. The legs are fantastic. The PvP pieces across the board are a small upgrade over last season. You also have that relatively insignificant choice here of, you want a little bit more resilience or do you want a little bit more healing power? Overall, your build is going to probably look like this, or it's going to look like my build. But either way, there's going to be a lot of very, very similar looking Resto Druids in the next season. One thing that will differentiate Druids in the next season is your weapon sets, and oh my god, there are so many options for weapon sets. So going back to my build here, the Vengeful Gladiator Salvation and Reprieve are great for healing, but you're going to want to have other sets. You're going to want to have your Ethereum Life Staff or your Spirit. For your Innervate, more important than ever, because you're not running Bangle anymore. You're going to need that Spirit Regeneration set. And of course, you're going to want an MP5 set. The Apostle of Argus is fantastic for that 23 MP5. Of course, the Apostle of Argus comes from Archimon, so it might not be super easy to get for you. Definitely something you want to work towards in the future. One thing worth mentioning that not a lot of people talk about is that you do want some sort of spell damage set if you're running the Dream State build. So you're going to want either, and this is going to sound memey, the Zardoom Staff, which you're probably not going to get, or the Vengeful Gladiator's Gavel, which is a much more achievable thing. But I would do this at the end of the season. Your normal healing weapon is perfectly adequate for quite some time. If you do get a Zardoom, definitely use that as a spell damage staff. One other really fascinating thing nobody's really thought about is that you can use a melee weapon with Dream State if you do spec into Boomkin, and you will get mana back when you attack pets. I learned this trick from Blakatron. you're going to want to get the best possible weapon you can for your Resto Druid for melee damage, and this is going to be the Pillar of Ferocity. This is the absolute best option you have to deal damage, and that's going to give you more mana back. So if you are running this Dream State spec and you do spec into Boomkin, this is the play. You're going to want to have a great melee weapon, and you're going to get so much mana back. All right, so we've covered the builds, we've covered the items. It's time to cover the specs, and there are new specs, so you're not going to want to miss this. We've got to cover everything. There are 3 popular specs. There are alternatives. There are 3 major specs, but there are a bunch of alternatives. You can run a ton of different stuff. This is the season of variety. If you love brambles, this is your time. If you love random, weird druid stuff, you can do pretty much whatever you want, and it has some viability. There are 3 major specs. My personal favorite spec, although it is not the most common spec, is the Tree of Life spec. So you get Feral Charge and Tree of Life. This gives you best of both worlds. You get interrupts, you get control, you get CC, and massive healing power. Obviously not great against Warlocks, but overall huge healing power, great in 3s, great in 5s, can work in 2s with certain comps, for example, Warriors. I find this spec to be very, very fun to play, and I enjoy it more than the number 2 spec, which is the much more popular spec, which is the standard spec. You get Insect Swarm, you get a little bit less healing power, you do not get your Tree of Life, but you get basically the same utility. You get longer range on spells like Fairy Fire. So across the board, you're switching out a couple talents here and there. Nothing too major. I would definitely recommend this spec more if you're running, for example, a Rogue. Insect Swarm with the decreased hit chance for the enemy is a must-have with certain comps. Another example would be if you're running like a Resto Druid. Enhanced Shaman, you're probably going to want to lower the hit of the enemy warrior, or he's going to explode your Enhanced Shaman. The last spec, and I'm really going to want to talk about this, is the Dream State spec. Such an interesting spec. Basically, nobody talks about it, nobody explains it, but it is a fascinating spec. I want to cover everything about it and why you might want to run it, especially if you're running, for example, with a Rogue. A bunch of variety of comps you can do this spec with, and it is so much fun. I would say maybe way more fun than Resto Druid, because you basically are a Boomkin and a Resto Druid at the same time. All right, so let's get into the first spec, the Tree of Life spec. My personal favorite, great in 5s, fantastic in 5s, unless you're against a really, really good Warlock that's going to banish you over and over again. But great in 2s with a Warrior. I love it in 2s. Love healing in the back with my Tree of Life, just out healing whatever's going on while my Warrior trades. So much fun, super relaxing, super chill. And of course, it's worth mentioning, Tree of Life means you can't get sapped, so it's even better in some weird it's even better in some comps. For example, if you're playing as a Rogue, it's great to have Tree of Life as something in your back pocket so you can keep rolling hots and staying alive. Other than Tree of Life and going all the way down the Resto Druid tree, we are going to be getting Feral Charge, which is great. We still get Bash. You have an option here, Feral Instinct, or if you're getting blasted, you could go Thick Hide instead for additional armor from items. I personally go Thick Hide. A lot of Druids go with the Feral Instinct for stealth. It's your call. Figure out what's happening in your games and make that judgment call. One other judgment call you get to make is whether you put the 3 points from Living Spirit or the 3 points in Natural Perfection. You get to choose, are you getting blasted or are you running out of mana? And you can swap these two. I personally prefer running the 3 out of 3 in Natural Perfection because you get a little bit of extra survivability, especially against things like Rogue Mage. And you do kind of notice that. You do notice the Natural Perfection. It will save you sometimes. Although I love this spec, it's super fun with Warriors, great in 3s and 5s as well. You're going to want to run this, especially if you have a beefy, strong frontlining partner. If you're running with a Rogue, you're probably not going to want to run this as much because Insect Swarm is so important with the hit chance. Also, it's worth noting that without Insect Swarm, you are much worse in 1v1. So if your partner dies, imagine a whatever comp where your partner dies the most. That's the comp where you want to have Insect Swarm because then you're able to win those 1v1s. If you're against a Mage and all you have is Moonfire, you're probably never killing the Mage. If you're against a Rogue and all you have is Moonfire, you're never killing the Rogue. But if you have Insect Swarm, it really adds an extra spammable dot that you can put on things and win those 1v1s. All right, so the next spec, the boilerplate spec, the spec that I told everybody to run, the private server spec, the spec everybody thinks of when they think of Resto Druid in arenas. This is your spec. It's got the Insect Swarm all the way down in the balance tree, giving you the 2% hit decrease, which is amazing, and a great amount of dot damage for a hugely cheap mana cost. It's one of the most mana efficient spells in the game, only 50 mana, which is absolutely ridiculous. It is worth noting what you do lose from this spec. You do not get the Tree of Life, and you're kind of losing a lot of the restoration here. It's not as significant as you'd think, though. This spec is perfectly viable. A lot of people run it. It's great with rogues. It's really, really, really fun in 1v1s. Overall, this is a really balanced build. As you can see in this example, the Nature's Grasp has been swapped for the Starlight Rast. So again, less damage here for kill potential, but you could swap things around to your liking. This is just a very standard spec. You're not gonna win any awards or prizes for running it, but if you play it well, you can win a lot of games. Whether you should run the spec or not is gonna depend on a couple factors. How powerful are melee in this phase, in this season? If the melee teams are just destroying, if rogues are destroying, if warriors are destroying, Insect Swarm becomes way more powerful because that decreased hit chance is significant. That being said, let's say casters are absolutely pumping and warriors and rogues aren't doing that much, well then you could switch into a different spec. For example, you could have more healing, or you could have more damage with the Dream State spec. All right, so let's get to the most interesting spec for Resto Druids in a long, long time. Dream State is fantastic. First of all, it's important to note this is not the only way to run Dream State. You can do a lot of different things. You can add in, for example, the Moonkin talent and drop something. For example, you could drop the Empowered Touch. You are losing things with Dream State. You lose the Feral Combat Tree, which is huge. The Feral Charge is amazing. The Bash. You don't get your Feral Instinct or your Thick Hide. You're losing out on a lot of different things here, but what you are gaining is fantastic. You are gaining Dream State, which in my opinion is not even really the #1 draw here. While Dream State does give you mana equal to 10% of your intellect while casting, which is fantastic, that's not going to be nearly as much mana as you would think. The real draw here is what Dream State represents. And what does Dream State represent? Dream State is the idea that your team can afford for you to go damage because your partner is going to kill things quickly enough that you do not need the additional healing power because you are losing a lot of healing power. And while the guys will say you can use Healing Touch and pump Healing Touch, and yes, Dream State is better with Healing Touch for a couple of reasons I'll get into, it is simply not that great. Healing Touch is not going to save your team. What you really have with Dream State is essentially a boomkin. You have a boomkin that is, let's say, 40% of Resto Druid, or whatever percentage you want to use. And it's amazing in a lot of situations. It's amazing in 5s. This is perhaps the best possible 5s spec you could ever run because it's giving you everything. It's giving you massive damage with control and solid healing power. At the same time, you could run this in 2s and blow people up with your Rogue. If you've got Rogue plus Dream State Druid, it's absolutely insane because the huge damage output, nobody can survive. Think of it sort of like an almost double DPS comp, but you're running healing. So it's sort of like Feral Rogue if the Feral Druid was a boomkin that also healed all the time and was, I don't know, cooler and handsomer. You get the idea. So let's just go down the talents one by one and explain why Dream State is so good. So first of all, Focus Starlight, increasing the critical strike chance of your Wrath and Starfire spells. And of course, you're getting all the way down into Starlight Wrath, so your Wrath and Starfire are pumping really quickly. You manage to get all of Nature's Grasp, and you could run Brambles if you want, or perhaps you could run Control of Nature, but either way, you get Insect Swarm as well. And you get Vengeance, increasing the critical strike bonus of your Starfire, Moonfire, and Wrath. So TLDR, we're already doing way more damage. We're doing way more damage. Pumping huge damage. Our Wrath, our Starfire, our Moonfires are just disgusting. We're talking about every single spell you're casting is going to be doing 1,000 damage plus. And imagine Moonfires critting for 1.5k plus. Anytime you want to pop them off, that's huge. But we're not done yet. So we get Nature's Grace. All spell criticals grace you with a Blessing of Nature, reducing the casting time of your next spell by 0.5 seconds. Nature's Grace essentially allows you to fish for procs. So you could, for example, have a level 1 Moonfire, fish for this proc, and then the next spell you cast is 0.5 seconds faster. So that means you could, for example, do an instant or near instant Wrath, or a much faster Healing Touch for a clutch heal, or a Starfire way faster. People won't expect that. It's insanely fast. It's something you can do pretty reliably and consistently and really pump out massive near instant damage. Another nice talent you get is Lunar Guidance, which increases your spell damage and healing by 25% of your total intellect. Just another nice talent. It's great to have this here. Gives you that additional healing power and even more damage on your Moonfires, on your Wraths, on your Starfires, of course. Moonglow reduces the mana cost of your Moonfire, your Starfire, your Wrath, your Healing Touch, your Regrowth, and Rejuvenation. Another just great talent. I'm glad it's here. As a Dream State Druid, you'll definitely appreciate it. Again, the mana's not going to feel as great as you'd hope with Dream State. It's more about the fact that you're becoming this hybrid Moonkin, hybrid balanced Druid, absolutely fantastic for pumping people down. One last talent other than Dream State we get is Moon Fury, increasing the damage by Starfire, Moonfire, and Wrath by 6%, just a raw 6% additional damage. And if you did want to put more points into it, you could even go out of Empowered Touch completely. You could lower your Gift of Nature. Whatever you want to do, you can be more damage, less damage, more healing, more, whatever you want to do. Of course, one other thing to note is that you could theoretically easily spec into Moonkin form if you wanted, and this is problematic in some ways because you cannot cast, for example, Life Bloom while in Moonkin form, which is kind of frustrating, but you get a lot of great bonuses. You don't have to be in Moonkin form all the time. Think about the tree form from our last build we were talking about. It's not 100% necessary to be in here all the time. Not only do you get the additional base armor, which basically turns you into a bear, but spell criticals, 5% increase for your party, which is fantastic. Melee attacks regenerate mana based on your attack power. This is very important to note. All of a sudden, you're getting mana back from hitting pets instead of losing mana like you normally would as you're slowly running out to a hunter. It's a really, really, really great way to sort of flip things around. I think everybody that plays Resto Druid is going to want to try this spec at least sometime, with so many interesting, unique wrinkles, from the massive, massive, massive damage from your Moonfires and your Wraths and your Starfires to the Moonkin talents, where you get to be a Moonkin. You get to have some fun as a Moonkin. You have Dream State for the massive regen. All these talents kind of synergize really well together. You can do whatever you want. You want to have Brambles. Do you want to reflect a lot of damage? Do you want to blow people up with your Rogue and your Druid? Whatever you want to do, you can do that. This is the season of experimentation, of having fun and enjoying yourself and playing the way you want to play. If you want to just be a tree the whole time, why not? It's not going to be a bad spec. You want to play 5s with 5 Dream State Druids. It's going to be fantastic. Whatever you want to do. Do whatever you want to enjoy and make it work for you. This is a season of having fun and experimenting. It's one of the best seasons in WoW history. You're not going to want to miss it. So get in there, play your Resto Druid however you want to play it. Do your research, get the right items, get the right spec, have an absolute blast, get some good partners. You won't regret it for even a second. Thank you so much for watching. Before we go, please let me know in the comments below what you plan on doing with your Resto Druid in TBC. Are you going to be playing arenas? Maybe you're going to be playing something else. Maybe you're playing a rogue, a warrior, shotgun, perhaps. Whatever it is you're playing, I want to hear about it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to have a great day.